6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely didn't.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Rank and Review. I am your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, and my good friend Mirielle Smith is going to join me to talk about 6 art horror movies. These are sort of second-tier, lower-tier, limited release horror movies that sometimes will sneak under the radar, or horror movies that just take a very arty approach to their subject matters. So that is the business you're going to be plugging into your ears this very day. If you have feedback, you can send that feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. The website is ranknreview.ca. And you should go into the podcast with the understanding that there will be spoilers for the 6 movies being reviewed, and probably some coarse language, especially from me. Thank you so much for listening to Rank and Review. All right, so I just pressed record just so we could get on started, because we're on the clock tonight. Mirielle Smith is back on Rank and Review, and I'm very happy about that. And we're going to be talking about some dark, psychological, I've sort of called it art house movies. A lot of these are like second tier released. You'd see it sort of the little theater, not at the big theater, or, in this day and age, it would go direct to streaming and disappear into the ether almost completely. So I guess I would start by saying, what's your position on art horror, in quotation marks, or would you define these as that?
Well, I didn't notice if you had named the group or anything, and I was searching for the common thread, and I was having a bit of a hard time, so I was going to ask you what grouped these movies, because they're almost all revenge movies, except one. They're almost all, about rituals or ritualistic behavior, except one. They're almost all about, have a female lead, except one. So, yeah, I guess art house movies makes more sense.
There's a psychological angle, I think, even in like Honeymoon, when you could say that the influence is external. The horror of the movie is the change that is happening in one of our main characters. And I think that, for me, that would be the through line in all of these movies, in that either a character is revealed something or dramatically changes, or usually both, within the course of the movies. But I've got a weird take on it, because as much as I love horror movies, I like to think I like them unpretentiously. I like a fun, dumb horror movie that knows what it is, I don't necessarily like a horror movie that's used to harangue me or wag its finger at me particularly. One of the things I like about horror movies is that they are kind of goofy, and we like them anyway. And I think that sometimes if you're too self-serious, it actually can detract from the horror for me. I think it's a similar issue I have with like David Lynch movies. I can appreciate them, but I have a hard time really loving them. Like I would rather you just made a straight horror movie most of the time. Now, there are cases where the artistic horror approach absolutely works. I'm not like against it, but I'm much more likely to watch a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street or Tremors than I am to watch a movie like Darling or The Eyes of My Mother. So I don't know if I'd call myself a fan necessarily, moreover that I'm just sort of a fan of the horror genre, but this wouldn't be my go-to.
No, I don't even know if I could, name any more. I just don't have the background to talk about art house horror movies in particular. So,
but I think that's going to be a thing that's different about these movies, as their approach are usually less conventional, or even if they are conventional in Mandy, they're like they're set on such a huge scale, like it becomes something else. Most of these movies don't seem to be taking place in the real world as we understand it. It's this other Eraserhead universe where everything is arch and weird and arty. And in the right day and in the right headspace, I can get into that. But again, it's not my general thing. Overall, I mean, without getting into all of it, did you have an okay time with the list, or is this going to be a tough conversation?
No, I did have an okay time with it. I had only seen one before. The rest I hadn't seen. And even though, for me, the bottom one was clear, the top one was clear, and then the middle, kind of had to think about it.
Yeah, that's very common.
Except for one, I didn't actively dislike any of them. So I thought they were at least interesting enough in their own way.
That's good. I think you might have done better than I did. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about these 6 movies before I list them off and we start talking, ranking, and reviewing? We'll call them art house horrors, will we? Are we agreed on this?
Sure, you're the boss.
Mirielle Smith and myself, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, are going to be reviewing a film called Darling, about a woman going crazy. a movie called The Eyes of My Mother, about another woman who's going crazy. A movie called Midsommar, about a woman who's crazy and then goes a little crazier, I think. But it can be debated.
It will be debated, I think.
Honeymoon, about a couple that retreat to the woods in Canada, and the newlywed wife sees a light in the woods and makes her crazy. Neon Demon is about a young model trying to make it in Hollywood, and she finds out that herself and everyone there is crazy. And Mandy is probably the most Nicolas Cage movie that we've had in quite some time, and he recently starred in a movie as Nicolas Cage. So that is an impressive feat. Those are the 6 art house quote-unquote horror movies that we're going to discuss today. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Boom.
Is it true what they say about this place?
Oh, old ghost stories. But the caretaker threw herself off the upstairs balcony.
Ma'am, there's one room that I can't get into.
Don't concern yourself with that room, dear. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Waiting for anybody?
I was waiting for you.
They have got to tell you this kind of thing before you move in, right?
That it's haunted? It's true.
So, Mickey Keating is the name of the director of this movie, Darling. And he does super low-budget horror movies for Glass Eyed Pix, which is a production company run by Larry Fessenden, who is sort of the low-budget filmmaker, if you ask me. He's just consistently produced very individual, very cheap, under-the-radar work, and he seems fine to keep doing that. And Mickey Keating seems to be in this same sort of thing. He produces quite a few movies. He gets one out every couple of years, but they don't seem to make a lot of ripples on the water. But unlike a lot of mainstream filmmakers. He's actually getting a catalog of films. The thing with Darling is that, like, I get what he's going for here. I just did a whole series of episodes on the 60s, so I've been watching a lot of 60s horror movies. And this is absolutely what he's plugging into for Darling. He shoots it in black and white deliberately. It is about this woman's descent into madness. It very deliberately references Roman Polanski's Repulsion. And I think in the special features he talks about stealing the soundscape and the vibe from Eraserhead. And it's this very bizarre portrait of a woman who's asked to take care of this old, possibly haunted, possibly cursed house, and how it takes all of her flaws and sort of magnifies them and causes her to fall apart. Or maybe she was just completely crazy when she got there. I can appreciate what he's doing, and I can understand the references that he's making, and I can even understand how he's not bad at doing it considerably, like in a low budget framework. But I have to admit, I laughed a few times in this movie when I don't think I was supposed to laugh. And I half of the movies we're reviewing this episode are less than an hour and a half long, and half of them are over 2 hours long. This one was less than an hour and a half long, but man, at times it really felt long. There's barely any dialogue for the first half an hour of the movie, and I'm sitting here and I'm trying to like it, and I'm trying to engage with the movie, and I understand the references he's making. I see what he's trying to do, but I'm just not connecting to the movie. And that's sort of where I start with Darling. Like, I get it, but it's not my thing. But maybe it's yours. Where does Mick stand on it?
I agree that I definitely thought that it was lacking in story, but this was kind of, this was the one for me that had the atmospheric mood that scares me, because I can just, for me to be alone in a giant house like that, for me, that's scary. So I can totally relate to that. And especially when you're alone in a house, like, I'm going to check the rooms, but in a house that big, by the time you get to the last room and checked it to make sure no one's there, someone could be in the first room that you checked, and you have to do it all over again, right?
Yeah.
So I totally tap into that feeling. So I thought that was good. However, all of those, I don't know the correct terminology, but when she's seeing all of those flashes of scary things in front of her eyes, right? I maybe jumped for the first one, but it kept happening over and over again, and I thought that was overdone. So yeah, kind of a mix, whether I appreciated the atmosphere and the mood, because I did, and then it was just too much.
Right. Well, yeah, I do think that the sort of jump scare, boo flashes of what's going on in her mind became a crutch after a point. Like, the first couple times, I guess that's what we're doing. But, the repetition of it took away any of its power.
Right, yeah.
And the same thing, I get, this, she stops answering the phone, so the phone's constantly ringing, and this is supposed to be this, irritating, driving madness thing. And it works in that it's driving me fucking crazy while I'm watching the movie, but...
It was so loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean Young is in the movie.
I don't know who that is.
She was sort of an up-and-coming, gonna be a super big thing actress in the 80s. She was in Blade Runner and a few other high-profile things. And I don't know, there's two schools of thought. There's one that she kind of went crazy and burned all of her bridges, and another one that she was just blacklisted. But she's never really had the career that you'd think that, or that she or anyone else at the time thought that she deserved, because she was pretty talented. And it's just interesting, they've got this sort of interesting high-profile actress, and she's just basically gives her the talk at the beginning of the movie. Like, this is the house, this is the history, call me if you need anything, I'm sure it'll be fine. And I kept on waiting for that other shoe to drop, because, did she deliberately put her there? Is there, is there some sort of witchcraft background going on into this? and that Sean Young is directly involved in, like, what are we going to do with that character? It's not about her. She shows up, she sets the stage, and then she leaves, and that is it. And I guess I shouldn't put more weight on it just because of the size of the actress, but I just expected more for some reason.
Yeah, and I guess, by the end, since it's happening all over again, I did get the impression that she is feeding the house.
Right.
But yeah, aside from that.
But again, we're all asked to put it together ourselves, more or less. Like, she finds out that the woman was fragile before she even arrived to the house, and she, whether she's truthful or not, thinks that maybe it wouldn't have been a good match if she'd known that at the time. I also had a hard time understanding a lot of the phone conversations, because as loud as the phone rings were, the other side of the conversation was deliberately very soft. I think that the main actress has got some really strong moments, but again, I spent the first half an hour of the moment just wanting someone to say something. They were so much preoccupied with setting the stage and setting the mood and setting the vibe of the house. And I do think they successfully do that, but at the cost of anything else happening in the movie.
Yeah, I agree. And then when she goes out and drops her inverted crucifix, and then the guy picks it up and hands it back to her, and then she's convinced that she recognized him from before and he's wronged her in some way. She invites him back to the house and then
brutally kills him.
Stabs him. But yeah, and I don't know, I guess she was suitably upset when she checks his ID and finds out that it's not the guy she thought it was, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just...
And again, like, as an audience member, like, are we asked to believe or disbelieve her at any given moment? And does the film ever give us any true answers, or are we just allowed to think about it? And again, I fall back on the Lynch argument. It's okay to leave it open and leave us to be, like, chewing over things, but I want to believe that you, as a writer or as a filmmaker, made a choice. And again, I'm not sure that happened here.
Yeah, and they don't show us what's in the room, and of course that's annoying, and yeah, I don't think they thought about what was in the room either, now that you mention it.
So, I mean, and this is, again, perhaps me, this sort of waft of pretension kind of hurts the scares a little bit for me. I can see that it's got its disturbing moments, and I get what they're trying to do, and I do think that this actress has the right look and feel for this type of movie, but I also should confess that even at its apex, like, I'm not a big fan of Repulsion. I'm not a big fan of, like, these, let's spend 2 hours watching this woman psychologically self-destruct movies. I mean, like, they had their place, they had their moment, but I'm not sure, like, what's left to say on the subject. And I think if you're going to do another one, you're going to have to bring something more to the table. I think the last one that tried to do it somewhat successfully would maybe be Black Swan. But I don't believe that, all women are fragile and going to become completely untethered. In fact, I think closer to the opposite is true. I know a lot of women that have survived horrifying things and are still more together somehow than I am.
Yeah, I don't get that from this kind of movie, though. Like,
Yeah.
if that's what they're saying, that's not what I'm picking up. So,
Good.
I don't know, maybe I refute that altogether. And it doesn't
There's just a lot of
like that for me,
movies about women who are dealing with a past trauma that eventually bubbles over into full-on madness. It's a thing that happens a lot in horror movies that I've noticed.
Well, and when a movie is like slow-paced like this and doesn't have very much dialogue, it allows your mind to wander a little bit, and then picky side comes out. Like, has she never cleaned up blood before? Like, the way she was cleaning up, there's no way that it was ridiculous. She's running her little cloth against the floor and then rubbing her own legs with it
Yeah.
and stuff. Like, that's just ridiculous. That's not how you clean up after a murder.
And it goes on for a long time. It's just a long, steady shot of her not very successfully cleaning blood from a bathroom.
And she only fills fills up one garbage bag with all of those body parts, and not a very full garbage bag either.
Yeah.
And why was her suitcase so heavy? They made such a big show of her dragging her suitcase up the stairs when she first gets there. And from what they show later on, she's only got clothing in there. And it was as though it was a 100-pound suitcase.
Yeah, I don't know if they were trying to make her seem weak and fragile and small in the environment.
But she got a garbage bag full of body parts out into the hallway with no problem, apparently.
This movie's fake.
It's totally fake.
Okay, well, yeah, I think we're on the same page then. Like, for a micro-budget movie, it's not... I mean, what were they trying to do, and did they succeed? I think Mickey Keating succeeded in doing what he was trying to do. It just wasn't a meal that I particularly enjoyed.
I don't do this very often. Do what? Go home with people? Neither do I. Your house is so neat.
Thank you.
Is this your mother?
Yes.
What did she do?
She was a surgeon in Portugal.
What kind?
Eyes. We used to do dissections together.
What happened to her?
I remember I was fascinated by how the inside of the body looked. She always hoped I would be a surgeon one day.
So sometimes I'll hear myself in an old review and then just like realize I'm a complete hypocrite, you know? I've seen this movie 1,000 times, ergo it sucks. I've seen this movie 1,000 times, but this one did it so well, I like it anyway. I just talked about Darling, which is a black and white movie of a portrait of a slow sort of falling insanity of a woman. And really that description could be the same for The Eyes of My Mother, although I have to say I liked The Eyes of My Mother considerably more as a film than I did Darling. Although, did I enjoy it? Might be another question. This is an impossibly ugly, macabre, otherworldly fairy tale that is gorgeously photographed in black and white. But they're gorgeously photographing a nightmare. Just a horrifying origin story of this, you know, serial killer, kind of, I guess. She destroys people more than kills them. By the time she kills them, she's really doing them a service in this movie. And again, it all starts with her childhood, growing up on the farm. Her mother is teaching her about, because she'd been an eye doctor, an optometrist, there it is. An eye surgeon, and she shows her how to remove eyes from the cattle when she's doing the butchering. And you get the feeling like this woman had, before she'd come to this farm, had a bigger life ahead of her than, you know, butchering the meat. And her resentment has somehow seeped into her daughter a little bit. And after a very terrifying home invasion takes her mother from her, and she's fundamentally changed. She ends up learning from the killer that killing can make you feel amazing, and by keeping him as this deformed pet, if that's how we can authentically interpret the film, which I will get your thoughts on as well, she develops a taste to, in order to fend off her loneliness as a now adult person, having lost every other contact in her life, she creates companions by rendering them blind and unable to speak and imprisoning them in a barn. But the movie, it sometimes, to me, even starts to make me wonder how much of what we're seeing is real and how much is sort of interpretive. It's ghastly. Like, the movie is ghastly. But it doesn't overstay its welcome. Again, it's like an hour and 15 minutes long. And I think it's doing what it's doing quite well. It's in a way that, like, I'm sort of impressed. and a little bit repulsed by it. But what does it all mean, and how do I feel about it afterwards? Well, I'm going to put the ball in your court.
Just to back up a little bit, I think my impressions of her becoming what she becomes are a little different than how you worded it.
Okay.
Because, I mean, sticking with the sort of fairy tale-ish kind of idea, I felt like her learning from her mother is purely, scientific learning, and had that been coupled with a mother's love and showing how to process emotion and all that, would have grown up fine with both sides. But since the one side was cut off, it's almost like, the compassion and the motherly guidance and all that was just amputated, and then she only continues in the other vein. That's kind of how I saw it, like,
right.
Rather than learning from the murderers and stuff. I mean, sure, that comes to play too, but I just felt like it was just the absence of her mother that just caused her to only focus on I guess the surgery
right.
part of her mother.
Well, she sort of got this, I hate to be dismissive, but this sort of farm kid indifference to death and viscera.
Yeah, and just, I might even say, well, I'm not a parent, so I guess I don't really know, but I kind of, sometimes I see that indifference in kids just in general.
Yeah.
Like just how they can look at things and...
But she never outgrew that.
Right.
And her indifference didn't extend to her family, but once her family was gone, there was nothing.
Right.
So I felt like it's some sort of combination of her wanting to connect with somebody but not being able to, and
yes.
This is how she expresses herself, her surgeries.
Yes, I agree. Yes, and once her father died, and she kept him around for a little bit, and had him propped up in the living room watching TV,
yeah,
and stuff, and and then of course his time comes, and she has to dismember him and put him in the fridge.
There's a weird ritual about putting pieces in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
But again, I can't fully close my hand on it. I don't understand it, but I'm not frustrated with it in the same way I was with Darling. Although, like, in a weird way, there's a lot of similarities. But the imagery is so much starker and stronger. Like, any still of this film could be like a photograph you hung on a wall. I don't know who would put it on their wall, but it is considered. It is very meticulously made and precisely made. Like, I get the feeling like this Pesci character, what's his name? Sorry. Nicholas Pesci is the name of the writer-director. He got to do the nouveau version of The Ring, which unfortunately bombed quite substantially, I think, off of the strength of this picture, but I wouldn't give up on him as a filmmaker, just on the basis of that. But again, I think these lower budgets sort of feel them out things might be more of his wheelhouse than doing a big, keep the popcorn flowing kind of horror picture.
Mm-hmm. And the music was very well chosen too. Like the Portuguese music that was in the background was, lovely and fitting. And also I like that this movie, in contrast to Darling, it had more of a framing structure, because that first scene is, the woman in the road asking for help, and then we finally get there in the story. At that point we're not sure, is it our main character or is it somebody else, and then finally that's revealed, and that's satisfactory. It's actually a story that took us somewhere.
But again, so ugly. Like, we want to be sympathetic to our main character, but like, she does terrible things. Like,
she does, and she obviously, but she does so she ends up getting a ride from a woman and her child. When she's out in the woods, they give her a ride back home, and she steals the baby from the woman and locks the woman up in the barn and does the same thing, cuts out her vocal cords and her eyes so that she can't scream or
Find
see
a way
anything
home.
or run away. Yeah, and but she, I mean, from what they show us, she's very loving towards the child. She's now can have a family. So, like, in a way, we can sympathize with her. Obviously, her, her path is not an admirable one, but...
No. I mean, I can sympathize with somebody for being mentally ill, but there's nothing worse than you could do to a person than take their child from them. Like, and then to leave them this scarred husk of madness locked inside a barn for years. No, like...
But that was weird too, actually. That was one of the parts that I didn't fully understand, from her point of view, because, I mean, she locked up the first guy because, what does she say to him? She says,
You're my only friend.
Yeah, why would I kill you? You're my only friend.
Yeah.
And so, but now she's got the boy, and that's what she wants, to make her family. So I don't really understand why she kept the mother. I mean, she could have just killed the mother. I don't know.
But
Maybe
that would have
her
been
style,
wrong.
Yes, but we can see that the boy, having grown up with a mother, obviously has developed compassion, even though she's his mother, because he lets the lady go.
Yeah. But, like, I was honestly starting to wonder if, like, how real the prisoners were until that scene happened, because once the boy actually saw us, like, did she kill them and, like, she just sees them and or goes in there to talk to the dead bodies the same way she was trying to talk to her mom and trying to talk to her dad? But no, she definitely kept them alive for years.
Yeah, that didn't even occur to me, actually. I took it at face value the whole way through for some reason.
It was just so extreme. Like,
yeah. But that was actually, you were talking about just the visuals and the beautiful filming. The scene where the first guy, Charlie, when she unchains him, brings him into the house and cleans him up so that she could presumably sleep with him, which is
gross.
Just gross. But she wakes up and he's run away, and we see him through the window in the yard, and she watches him for a while, and then the shot stays there, and she goes outside and then has to kill him. She's stabbing him. But that whole sequence was just really visually stunning, actually.
It's like, that is the thing that, like, this movie really has that I think Darling doesn't, is that the images stuck with me. And, like, it kind of hung in the air. After I turned off the movie, I was like, wow, I watched something there. Like, again, it worked in that art way where it kind of hurt my brain, but also left me curious and fascinated. And again, I'm going to give him a pass on the Ring movie. I would be curious to see another film made by this guy. But it's strange. It's another one of these horror movies that, like, I have a lot of respect for it, but it'd be a hard one to recommend to somebody. Or, like, who is this movie for? It's like it's not really a torture porn movie. I mean, it is violent, but for all we're describing, it feels like you see more than you do in the movie.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with just her emotionless way that she carries everything out. I mean, she does, I was trying to remember when she kills the woman that she picks up at the bar. I can't remember, was she upset about that? I think she was upset at a few things in the movie, but for some reason I can't remember what those were. But she seemed just, to have no emotion when she was doing the rest of her slicing and dicing.
It's just what she does. It's actually almost calming for her, it seems.
Yeah. But it was interesting. At least it was interesting, this one.
Yeah, and interesting will take it over the line for me.
Dude, she needs a therapist. You've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for like a year now.
And don't forget about all of the beautiful Swedish women you'll meet in June.
Okay, guys.
That's not her again. Seriously?
Babe, what's happening? Danny.
I was so very sorry to hear about what happened.
I'm sorry.
I invited Danny to come to Sweden.
You know what she's been going through.
Christian says you've got this special week planned.
It's sort of a crazy festival. Special ceremonies and dressing up.
That sounds fun.
Unbelievable.
Welcome and happy Midsummer. Skål!
What time is it?
9 p.m.
That can't be right. The sky is blue.
This is what 9 p.m. is like here.
How long have you two been together?
Just over 3.5 years.
4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's like another world.
Tomorrow's a big day.
So Ari Aster had done this movie Hereditary, which I reviewed very recently on the podcast with Mr. Matthew Risling. We were both big fans of it, but I said that the movie kind of hurt me. Like, it was so psychologically ugly and fierce that it felt like it scarred me. I was curious to see his follow-up, Midsommar, and I have a hard time saying which of the two I think is a better movie, honestly. But I think Midsommar is a movie that would be easier to approach again and revisit for me. Not that it isn't bleak and dark, but that it is such a distinct and interesting horror movie. I mean, it gets compared to The Wicker Man, and I absolutely understand that comparison. But as far as a modern example of first of all, a horror movie that takes place almost entirely in daylight, and that is, it's about a cult, but it's sort of not the stabby, murdery cult aspect of the movie, which is troubling and disturbing. It's the character arc, this woman, this Florence Pugh character going through, like, the environment that she's already in. She's sort of surrounded by poisonous people, and she goes with this group of poisonous people and enters a group of even more poisonous people and finds her home and her happiness there at the cost of everyone around her. It is not a feel-good number, but it is an impressive piece of filmmaking. And I have to say, the lead actress, Florence Pugh, blew me away when I saw this movie. Just the range of emotion that she's asked to portray, the arc of her character, and that ending that feels kind of like a happy ending somehow, even though it is the bleakest, darkest ending that you could possibly imagine. We see her smiling at the end of the movie. And at the beginning of the movie, she has lost her sister, who's clearly out of her mind, and had a long history of mental illness, kills herself and her parents, completely orphaning the Florence Pugh character. And she has this terrible boyfriend, and this terrible boyfriend has a bunch of terrible dudes that he hangs out with. And she's got no safety net around her. She's got no genuine support system around her. She is ostensibly going through this nightmare completely alone. And as she gets taken to this 90-year Midsommar festival, where are they? I'm trying to remember where it was located. Anyway, in Middle Europe somewhere.
They're in Sweden.
Sweden. Let's say Sweden. It's not super important, but it's a not once every 90-year festival. It's happening during the peak season of the year where there's almost no nightfall. There's the sun is shining like 20 hours a day or whatever. And she is taken in by these people, and she needs a home. She needs a family. She is like a vessel of pain and need. And in a weird way, this cult is there for her. And yet the movie is completely chilling. So, I'm a big fan of Midsommar. I think I tipped my hand there. And Ari Aster, very interesting filmmaker. I would be very curious to see what else he's got in his catalog. So, yeah, I'm going to add on to the pile of everyone else who says Midsommar was a great modern horror movie. That even though you can see its influences, it felt new and fresh to me while I was watching it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I find it difficult to even organize my thoughts because there's so much to comment on, but just from the visual, just to start with the visual aspect, I mean, we're beautiful scenery, and all of the transitions, or a lot of the transitions, were super interesting, the way they were filmed. For example, when they're going to leave on the trip, she goes into the bathroom, and then from above we see she transfers into the bathroom of the airplane. That was really cool. And when they've arrived in Sweden and they're driving down the road, and the camera just pulls up and the road's upside down for a while, that was really cool to look at. And then when we finally arrive at the destination, we have soundtrack music in the bathroom, and then I'm in the background, pardon me, and as I'm still in the bathroom, and as the camera pans, we see that they're actually playing this music. It's not just background music. All of those just lovely, subtle things were just really great. And then of course everyone's in their festive garb, and it just looks fantastic and otherworldly in a way, and maybe we're in a different time. Just visually it was just top notch.
It's also interesting because you're so focused on the Florence Pugh character that you kind of don't pay attention as much to everyone else because she's just magnetic. But this guy who's bringing them to the festival is an interesting character upon watching the movie again. And I don't know if he specifically selected her knowing that she was going to be the May Queen or whatever it was, but I'm pretty sure he brought these people knowing that they would end up sacrifices to the festival. And
yes, that I definitely agree with. I don't know that later on they sort of suggest that maybe he already had her in mind for the May Queen, because someone congratulates him on his
selection,
sort of. But yeah, I don't know. She still had to succeed at all of the trials.
They start at first. It's just kind of weird and fun. They're trying to sort of seeping in the local culture. They're doing some hallucinogenics, and they're running around in circles, and there's a lot of women who are being very sexually aggressive.
And of course they have the sort of the friend who has all the sidebar comments that are really funny, we're just going to ignore the bear.
Yeah, exactly.
We pan past a bear in a cage, or someone should tell those ladies they're walking stupid. They're walking backwards, picking flowers. So those were.
But again, he was being very disrespectful of the festival, was he not?
He was. Well, he pissed on the ancient tree, and
That's
he didn't even feel bad about it.
I just had to pee. He was sort of emblematic of the ultimate asshole American tourist.
Exactly. How was I supposed to know it was an ancient
Put a sign up, say don't piss here. Otherwise, I'm going to piss wherever I want.
Exactly. So he had it coming. I didn't feel bad for him.
But there's a turning point, and the turning point happens when they follow the procession to these cliffs, and some of the older members, the octogenarians of the cult, climb up to the top and fall to their deaths in extremely graphic measures, too. It's one of those things where you're expecting the camera to pull away, and the camera does not pull away. Ooh. And these people are dying, they're sacrificing themselves, and it's a horrifying thing to witness, especially when you're not prepared for it. And I think it's interesting how everybody reacts a little bit differently. There's even one end of the spectrum where I guess we got to be respectful about their wishes, and then there's the other end of the spectrum is I need to get the fuck out of here. What the hell am I doing here? This is insane. And in a weird way, both of those reactions seem somehow believable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, and the second man misses the landing stone, I'm gonna call it, and doesn't die right away, and so they have to go over with their huge mallet and finish him off.
And they do it in a very sort of drawn out, precise way too. Put him out of his misery.
Yeah.
But that's the scene, in any other horror movie where you just say, well, everybody should get away from these people. They're clearly, this is not an okay place to be. But I believed them sticking it out. I believed them.
But the guy is right there saying, no, this is part of the festival. It's part of the festival.
They volunteered.
Yeah, you'll understand. It's totally fine. It's just how it goes.
And going back to what you said about is no one going to mention the bear? The bear does come up later on.
Yeah. Poor Christian.
Poor Christian, yes. It's interesting how, like, the boyfriend, he is such an asshole, but...
Well, okay, like, he's a dick. He's a huge dick, but because he doesn't have the courage to be honest about anything, and that's really his downfall. I don't think, like, he's a bad person. He's just such a coward that he can't tell the girl he doesn't want to be her boyfriend. He can't tell his friend that, oh, you know, I'm going to, you know, not invite my I invited my girlfriend on the trip. Like, everything he has to lie about and just be such a weasel.
Devil's advocate, she just lost her entire family. Is he really going to dump her right now and then leave her to be suffering alone? Like, it's all obligation to him. He doesn't love her. He isn't into her anymore, but he feels this obligation to her. So he's in...
And yet he doesn't come through, though. Like, he doesn't support her like she needs.
No, at all. At all. He won't. Yeah. He won't throw her away, but that's as much as he can offer her, it seems.
Yeah.
But does he deserve to be burned alive?
Well, okay. It had to be him or the other guy, so maybe he deserved it more than the other guy. No, of course he didn't deserve to be burned alive.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I've heard people talk about the movie, about how the ending was like a weirdly upbeat ending, like she finally found her happiness, and I'm like, I don't think this is a happy ending, you guys. I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree. I mean, yes, she's found a home, and yes, she'll be probably happy there, but she's mad, right? Like, she has lost her humanity completely. But she's not lonely anymore, and she's not sad anymore. So it's like, for her, a happy ending. But for everyone else, no.
And I like the Pele character. He's, you know, as he's kind of talking her along, I think one of the things the way he phrases is I've always been held. I've always been held by my family. Have you ever felt held? And the answer is a big fat no for her. And, you know, when they're having the scenes where she has she's witnessed the approved mating of her boyfriend with the Maya character, which that's a really crazy scene. Yeah, especially the woman, the old lady who's like pushing him from behind. God. But anyway, so like she's you know, just crying in pain, and they all started crying with her, and that's all she wanted. You know, that's what she wanted from her boyfriend.
Empathy.
You know, after and they're just doing it like in a very physical, you know, like overt way.
Well,
with her.
same thing when they light the fires. There are people who are still alive in the fire who are screaming, and the crowd suffers with them as they're in the fire. The whole part of the raison d'etre of the cult is empathy. Both, you know, for good things and bad things. The community feels it together. It doesn't happen to one person. It happens to all of them. And again, our lead character needs that so much. But there's this, not even bittersweet. It reminds me of the ending of Let the Right One In. You know, the vampire. Did you ever see that one?
I did. I've seen them both. I don't remember them that great. Actually, it's weird. I just read the book afterwards, and now there's a TV series starting. Apparently, I haven't watched it yet though on Crave. There's but
the little boy gets everything he wants. He finally has a friend. He's no longer bullied, and yet it's a terrible ending, right?
Right, because he's now tied to her forever.
And that's sort of how I feel about Midsommar. Like, she is happy, she got what she wants, but now she's tied to this evil place forever.
Yeah. But her May Queen cloak and crown is so visually stunning. It's just beautiful.
Oh, the movie's powerful.
Yeah, she looked miserable though after they crown her, and there's a shot of her with her face. She just looked just miserable, and then you know, she gets over it, I guess. But no, her smile at the end was apt. I think it was good. It was like perfect. It was a perfect amount of smile, I guess I'm trying to say.
And with the raising music and the raising flames and the bright imagery, like, it's a powerful ending of the movie. Like, it lands completely. I'm just amazed that some people think it's a happy ending, because that was not my interpretation of it at all.
Well, that would be, it's the same kind of happy ending as if you would want to say that being John Malkovich is a happy ending.
Right. It worked out for a couple of the characters.
Exactly, yes.
You okay? Couldn't find you.
I must be sleepwalking. I'm fine.
How's my little zombie face this morning?
I made a coffee.
I could be human.
What's going on with you? You feel distant, different. Did something happen in the woods?
Come with something.
What's this?
They're mosquito bites.
They don't look like bug bites.
You're acting crazy. You should leave. You're not safe.
What's going on? We need to leave.
You can't.
Where did you put the keys? Where are the keys? Who's out there? Are we shining a light?
I want to protect you.
Where is my wife? You look like her, but you're not her.
Talk to me! Tell me what's going on! Anyone tell me what's going on! Something bad happened to me. Something bad happened to me in the woods.
So Honeymoon is a different movie than we've been talking about so far, and that I don't necessarily think it's about someone who is already damaged that becomes crazy. Something external happens to our main character in this movie that changes her very suddenly. But I do think that the movie taps into a real fear that people have of, like, you're with somebody, you commit to that person, you tie your life to them. And then, because everything does, they have the audacity to change. How is it that you're not the same person that I met 25 years ago? How dare you, sir? But what this does is what if that happened right now? Like, all of a sudden, like, there was no gradual process of the change. The change just happened. The night before, the woman that you were with loved you. The next day, she seems completely not interested in you and detached from everything and really not giving good answers as to why. Like, she doesn't almost even care enough to think of a reasonable lie.
Yeah, not giving any answers.
That's right. And just not even clocking the change. Like, remember yesterday when we were, like, newlyweds and all over each other and everything was tickety-boo? And now, like... we can't pretend that nothing is happening, but that's what couples will do, right? They'll just pretend that nothing is happening for as long as possible to sustain normalcy as long as possible. Like I say, the main difference is these lights in the skies, these aliens or whatever it is that have been messing with her are the catalyst for the change. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't some flaw in him or her. It was something that happened to her. But the horror of the movie is like the person you're with has changed dramatically and they were not helping you. What can you do about it? And I think that's a very relatable fear. I think that the cast is really good. I've only known Rose Leslie. I guess she had a small part in Game of Thrones. And I was trying to remember where I saw this Harry Treadaway from. He was in Attack the Block. That's where I recognized him from. But I don't know. I like both of these actors. I think they have good chemistry. I believe them when they're in love with each other, and I believe them when they're not connecting. So it's an interesting movie. I guess in the end, the question is, and as I've asked with so many of these art house movies, what did it all mean? What do we take from it? That's what I took from it. What did Mireille take from it?
This movie kind of, I got annoyed. This movie annoyed me a lot. Even though I agree with you that they were both good actors. I liked them. Yes, they had chemistry, but it was that thing where it was so repetitious with the what's wrong? Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And the no answers, no answers, no answers. Okay, something mysterious happens. Still no answers, no answers. Still just not answering questions.
Right.
And that just happened for way too long without the story moving forward, and it was just driving me crazy. So I don't know, and because of that, I just didn't get into it, and I was just waiting for it to end. I just didn't connect with this movie really at all, just because, and plus I was distracted that she kind of had a very Emma Stone-ish voice. She was distracting me with her Emma Stone-ishness.
Well, I didn't necessarily connect the Emma Stone-ish thing, but as far as being frustrated by the failure to answer questions, or even more so, the failure to ask a follow-up question. Like, if someone gives you an answer that is just clearly categorically false, follow it up. Like, make them back that up, right? Don't just say, okay. Because then you're playing along, you're entering their world. But I mean, I do think that that's true. It's the same crux, and I complained about it when we talked about it in Rosemary's Baby. Like, these people are clearly manipulating and fucking with you. Fight back. Ask a hard question. Make them answer you clearly. Like, they're making all these demands of you. You should be able to make a demand of your own, and she never does. And that frustrated me in Rosemary's Baby. So I think that I can relate to that here. And this is clearly not as good a movie as Rosemary's Baby, but I liked that relatable feeling of being utterly helpless on what to do about this person that you love suddenly changing. If it was Cronenberg, she'd be turning into a fly or something like this, right? And you'd just be having to deal with it. But, like, I think that's what's really driving him crazy. He can't put his finger on what this was until she tells him, and finally, like, that there was a light, and this put something inside of her, and that really graphic birthing sequence that takes place.
Yeah, that was gross.
But once that happens, then, well, we have to get away from this place, right? Like, we need, like, honeymoon over. And yeah, like, her childhood buddy and his wife are acting strange too, but I mean, it seems weird to be too judgmental of them considering what's happening to you guys. So, like, it didn't seem like a huge jump to say, well, maybe something weird is also happening to them, but he kind of went to the jealous boyfriend thing, right?
Yeah, and that was another thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, you know. I mean, all she had to do was answer a question of, you know, oh, I knew him when we were kids, and, you know, explain a little bit, but no, she just leaves it hanging so that he has to wonder, is there some sexual tension here? Is something going to happen? Is he, you know, is he a freaky weirdo? Like,
but I don't necessarily think it's about him being alpha male about it either. Like, he feels like something has to have made this happen. Something has changed. If not him, what would it be?
But it's her who won't answer any questions. And I understand that at some point, whatever's inside her is taking over, and that's what's not answering the questions. Like, I get that she's not maybe able to take control the whole time, but like up until the point where he's tying her to the bed and, you know, making demands of her, I think she was fully capable of, you know, saying more than she did.
Yeah. And he was sort of sensing that at that point, but it did seem to escalate awfully quickly. And I think that could be a weakness of the film too. Again, like, I like the vibe that they're going for, and I think the actors went a long way for me, but like, how much of her is inside whatever, like, she's clearly being possessed or fucked with in some way, like, so, like, she says that she's gonna make breakfast, but she forgets how to make breakfast. She says that she's gonna make coffee, but she forgets how to make coffee. Like, does she not know that she's gonna forget how to make coffee? Like, those are good telltale weird signs that something's off, but, like, why did she do that?
Yeah, and they kind of hint at, like, they give us hints that maybe this does date to before times, because she acts all weird about him when he makes a joke about her uterus or whatever. I can't remember what the joke actually was, but makes a joke about her getting pregnant, and she gets totally
offended,
defensive, and weird about it. And so to me, that says, oh, like this is kind of like a foreshadowing or something like that. But and the way she was with Will, that something was there from before, and maybe they shouldn't have gone on their goddamn honeymoon to the stupid cabin in the woods. Like this is kind of her fault. I don't know. That's how I saw it.
Well, and that we see the parallel story happening with the neighbors, sort of slowly being revealed, or that she was hiding her husband under the water, right?
Yeah, he'll be safe there.
Yeah. Yes. And again, I think that was a really powerful scene. She ends up saying that she needs to protect him from the outsiders, the alien, whatever it is. She's going to hide him. She renders him unconscious. He wakes up on a boat with this chain wrapped around his legs and the chain hooked up to an anchor. And she drops it basically the second he wakes up. So he's watching that line disappear and his life disappear with it. And it's a powerful moment, but I wanted more from her in that scene. If there was anything left of her in I wanted to see it. Because at that point it was well, was there anything left of her at any point? What took her so long to do this? If that's what's going to happen. But the look of horror and betrayal on his face, I wanted to see it echoed back in hers. But did she really believe that she was hiding him under the water? Is that where her real place was, or was she completely gone at that point? And I think it might be a weakness of the movie that there's no real answer there.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel as burned by the ending as I did in Darling. We didn't get to see what was in the room. We don't get to see what's in the light, but we do get to see both of the women walk out into it, and that this was an external force. It wasn't the women, it wasn't madness, it wasn't, there was no misdirection in that way. Sort of with again, going back to Rosemary's Baby, their fate were sealed basically from the moment they saw that light. And that's sort of the horror and tragedy, I guess, of it. Yeah, it's heavy. It's not a feel-good number. But I guess you either connect to it or you don't. And that's what I was talking about at the introduction with these arty movies, I guess. You take the ride or you don't. I didn't take the ride with Darling. I did with The Eyes of My Mother. I'm sort of in the middle with Honeymoon, in that I see a lot that I like about it. I find it chilling, and I find the horror in it kind of a relatable, tangible, everyday horror, which if you can tap into a vein of something like that, I think can really be effective. So I don't know. I say if the conversation made you curious to check it out, for sure check it out. But yeah, it seems in the weird way too in this bunch the most kind of straightforward of the movies. There's nothing overtly arty about the presentation. Some of the reveals are held from us, but I kind of feel of all the movies, this one exists closest to being in the real world.
Okay, yeah, I'll say that. The reason I was hesitating is because I thought Mandy was pretty straightforward. Revenge.
Yeah. But in another planet.
With big dreams, some girls crack under the pressure. You're going to be great.
What's it feel like? You walk into a room, it's like in the middle of winter. You're the sun.
It's everything. You know what my mother used to call me? Dangerous. You're a dangerous girl. She was right. I am dangerous.
Nicholas Winding Refn, or as he kind of pretentiously stamps his initials at the beginning of the film, NWR. He's made some interesting, visually strong movies. I think Drive was a really interesting and visually strong movie. I've totally blanked on the name of it. He did this movie with Mads Mikkelsen, very violent, sort of medieval set, visceral movie, but the name escapes me. But he's definitely got his own specific style and his own sort of approach to doing things. And I think the more he's established himself as Nicholas Winding Refn auteur, the more he's kind of got lost in the stink of his own farts a little bit. The Neon Demon is unmistakably arty farty. Like it wears its badges of this very, very honestly and proudly. It's going to be a devastating, mean-spirited attack, bleak satire almost, on the fashion industry. And it's going to take its time. It's going to be all about powerful, sharp images, strong soundtracks, slow camera pans, and the slow unraveling of this story. We have a teenage, Elle Fanning plays this teenage model. She's supposed to be, I think, 16 in the movie. And she is being consumed, shall we say, into the world of high fashion. And it's portrayed in that very Lynchian sort of, this whole industry is run by the devil, you know? And everybody in it, the bigger they smile at you, the less you should trust them. There's some interesting actors that show up throughout the movie, and it definitely has a very strong vibe and distinct identity. And I'm not a big fan.
I hated this movie.
Okay, we're on the same page. I thought maybe that Honeymoon was going to be the one that you were talking about, but no. I guess I said it with Darling. I understood very quickly what this guy was doing and what he was going for. I got it, and it went on for 2 hours, and I wanted it to be over so much sooner than it was.
I guess it was successful in that, yes, it expresses that the pursuit of youth and physical beauty is, you know, to the detriment of everybody. Oh, hot take. Like, what? I mean, who cares? It's not, that's not a deep or, you know,
and unsubtle. Like I said, she is consumed by the fashion industry. Literally. Okay. Brilliant. Now let's draw it out as long as possible.
And I guess it had, I mean, they string us along for a little bit, with her being innocent and sweet, and we don't know how she's going to end up. But as soon as she makes her declaration, she sends her a nice date off packing when he says that, you know, looks don't matter or whatever. He says something like that, and then she, you know, turns him away because she is going to enter this world of just awfulness. After that, it's like, well, I mean, who cares?
It also, I don't know, it seems like such a female world, female perspective, like that you almost, if you're going to tell this story yet again, you almost need a woman to be telling it. Like, I ended up feeling weirdly bad for Jenna Malone, who she plays one of the witches in, I guess you could call them these, who is preying upon Elle Fanning. She also did another movie called Sucker Punch, which was...
I didn't see that.
That's fine, because it's terrible. But it's a similar idea where they're like trying to tell this feminist story, but they're handling it so clumsily that it's actually kind of embarrassing by way of almost offensive at times. And she's done 2 of these now. She did Sucker Punch and The Neon Demon, and she's been in Hollywood since she's been a little kid. And I remember watching this scene because my mind was wandering because there's lots of air in the proceedings. Jenna Malone like walking around topless, hosing off the pool patio, and I felt bad for her. I felt bad for the actress, and I just felt like completely unplugged from the movie. And the movie wants you to be hypnotized, sort of like lost in its atmosphere and drooling at all the images, but it just kept on kicking me out of it. Like, I couldn't focus on the movie. Like, my mind was almost being forced to wander in other directions.
Well, and it was so self-consciously about the images, right? I mean, sure, they related to the story, but I mean, you have Jenna Malone pissing on the floor in the moonlight. You have the two models in a blood shower. You have Jenna Malone, you know, in a bloodbath. You have her, like, on top of a corpse, making out with a corpse. You have, you know, her lying in a grave smoking a cigarette. I mean, it was just like the guy had all these images that, oh, this will look great on film and it'll be shocking.
But it should mean something.
Yeah.
It should mean something. It should have some emotional power to it. When our main protagonist gets pushed into the deep end of a swimming pool and has this drawn-out death, I should feel something. All I was feeling was, we must be getting close to the end.
Well, and they had made us not like her by then. Because she had made her declaration of, oh, I'm only into beauty and I'm better than all of you and you guys wish you were me.
Which was true, to an extent.
Well, and, you know, they wanted to consume her and everything, so, like, we don't like them either.
No.
But they made us not like her before they killed her, so...
There could have maybe been some pathos or some tragedy to the movie, but already at 16, she wasn't, you know, going to be doing this. Also, the choice of casting Elle Fanning, like, I guess Wending Refn was like, she is the look, and she has to look really young. But it was a compromise because he'd wanted... There's this scene early in the movie where she gets covered in gold paint for a photo shoot.
Yeah,
and
Desmond Harrington.
That's right.
To her.
A terrible photographer in the modeling agency, a pretentious photographer. Who'd have thought they'd have gone there? But I guess originally he had these, like, really graphic ideas of, like, sort of like the James Bond golden sort of like nudity and being smeared all over, but because she was underage, he couldn't do that scene.
Oh, that's why the movie didn't, you know.
So it showed restraint only when it was legally obligated to. I don't know, like I'm not like crossing him off the list. I'm not saying I'll never watch another one of his films, but he's definitely on notice for me for this movie. I haven't seen Only God Forgives. Apparently that's terrible as well, but he has made interesting movies in the past. And I just think this is not the right marriage of subject for him. Or again, generally, it seems really tired to me. Like you said, the fashion industry is corrupt. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being there for us, Hollywood. And it does end up feeling it ends up feeling gross and exploitive, even if it's trying to make this statement about how this is bad. The way we are asked to linger over all of this, it's not necessarily erotic, but it is graphic and you know, a lot of naked parts for the sake of naked parts. And yeah, the Lady Bathory legend, if you can bathe in the blood of the young and the beautiful, it will retain your... we get it. Thank you. But let's do a slow-mo shower scene.
Yeah. Oh, and, I mean, yeah. Ugh. And, so, of course, they've, you know, they've eaten the poor Elle Fanning, and the two of the models go off to a different shoot, and one of them starts getting an upset stomach, because sometimes that happens when, you know, you eat another person. And
should have cooked her or something.
Yeah, and so she throws up an eyeball, and the other girl picks up the eyeball and eats it. I mean...
She throws up an eyeball and then kills herself by cutting into herself.
Yes.
So I guess she felt a little bit of buyer's remorse when all was said and done. But the other girl doesn't flinch at all. In fact, eats the vomit. Well, the eye vomit.
I mean, eating anything that somebody else has thrown up is just...
And this is the stinger. This is what we're going to leave you with. This is like...
And then she saunters off to a successful
modeling career.
Yay! Ugh. Gross. And why? I don't understand. Why Keanu Reeves? Why Christina Hendricks? What the hell was going on?
Well, Christina Hendricks has worked with him before. And Keanu Reeves has a history of, like, doing smaller parts in interesting directors' movies. Like, it's just sort of a way he kind of keeps himself in the Hollywood system. But yeah, he's like the guy who runs a hotel that Elle Fanning's staying at, who chases a tiger out of, or a cougar, mountain lion. There it was, out of her room, and
he's just a gross, horrible man.
Yeah. But I mean, but where does he fit into the rest of the movie? I don't think he does, really. No. But you're right, Keanu Reeves is in it. Christina Hendricks, I think, has a working relationship with him. And it was just a small sort of, she's a terrible woman at an audition role. But I don't know. I didn't mind seeing her because I just like her as an actress.
Oh, for sure. I was just wondering, like, what in the world? Those two parts could have been played by anybody. Why are there, name actors in this? I just thought it was weird.
Well, he did a movie called Bronson.
I've seen Bronson, yeah.
And if you watch that movie, you think, wow, this guy would be really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so I could see as an actor looking at some of his other films and saying, yeah, I want to work with this guy. But no, The Neon Demon is, I think, hot garbage. I'm actually glad that you agreed with me on it because it's one of those ones that, like, people will react strongly to. Some people think it's genius and other people don't. I am in the latter column where I think it's the opposite of genius. I mean, I think you have to be, on some level, a talented filmmaker to make a movie this pretentious and bad. But if he was a more amateur filmmaker, it wouldn't look as good. And it would be somehow less frustrating because I'd be like, oh, well, he's trying, But I get the feeling this is exactly what the man wanted on screen. And it's out of tune. It's really off tune for me. Like, I didn't learn anything from it. I wasn't impressed by it. I actually kind of was close to angry with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, with regard to his, wanting particular images, the opening scene is Elle Fanning getting photographed and
as if dead.
Yeah, she looks dead. There's blood pooling around, and it's, this visual kind of beautiful, in quotation marks, shot. But it's the nice boyfriend who's the photographer, who's trying to break into the photographer industry. And that is not in keeping with his character that we're seeing later on at all. No. Like, his personality is not at all, like, indicative that he would be into this, like, gore photo shoots and stuff. It just doesn't fit. Doesn't make sense.
Nobody in this movie is real, and nobody in this movie feels real. And it kind of, as a result, keeps you at arm's length.
Agree.
So what you gonna do with that thing?
I'm going hunting.
So what you hunting?
It's crazy evil.
You think you're so in love? I'll show you love.
Oh man, they wronged you. You exceeded cosmic darkness.
It glowed from within, strange and eternal.
And I just said about Neon Demon that nobody in it feels real and the world doesn't seem real. Couldn't the exact same thing be said of Mandy? But in that I was being pushed away and aggravated by Neon Demon, I felt myself getting weirdly hypnotized and drawn into Mandy. So once again, we have these two polarizing reviews, and that the movies, in a weird way, share a lot in common in that they're not bringing anything new to the table, and they're just bringing aggressive style. But in the way that the Neon Demon didn't work for me, Mandy largely did. I do think it goes on a little bit longer than it should. I think like 90 to 100 minutes probably would have done better than 2 hours. But I just sat staring at the psychedelic purple world of Mandy, feeling drool coming out of the corner of my mouth. And it's not a necessarily, you're not going to learn anything when you watch Mandy, Oh, thumbs up, we are.
You do learn one thing. Maybe I'll save it for later when we get into the story. But
Okay.
we do learn one thing, yes.
Well,
Important lesson.
Nick will tell us what maybe we learned from Mandy. But basically, this is an exercise in style. And usually, I'm not big on a style as substance movie. But Mandy is the exception, I guess, that disproves the rule, because even though I was fighting it for a while, and I do think I was kind of starting to fold my arms and say, come on, start moving, get out of the mud, people, I understood eventually after the first 40 minutes that the vibe of this movie was not that it ever gets into a high gear, that this was an experience that you just had to, endure. That's Mandy, and it is a very distinct movie. It's sort of famous for reigniting interest in Nicolas Cage, who'd been doing so many direct-to-video forgotten and unwatched movies that it was almost starting to become, sad stage Nicolas Cage. But he found a movie that matched his own sort of tenor of madness, and because the movie does move slow, when the emotional peaks and outbursts happen, they have real power. They really count. When shit goes down in this movie, you're like, good God. And that's the experience of watching Mandy. It is a psychedelic, slow march horror movie centered by an absolutely off-the-hook Nicolas Cage. And if that sounds appealing to you, watch Mandy. If it doesn't, don't watch Mandy.
Yep. Yeah, Mandy is kind of bonkers.
Yes, it is.
I enjoyed the bonkersness of this one. Okay, well, visually I did have my sort of plus side, negative side reactions, because I did like the whole, the color and the washes to a point. I did think that got a bit much in some spots, but but it works. But I really loved the fantasy illustrations, his dream sequences and stuff like that. I thought those were really lovely, and they fit in just nice, and those were great. And let's see, the cult leader, he was, I think that's what I thought of when you said that, okay, it's time to get going. I kind of felt that when he was giving his speech after they had kidnapped Mandy, and he was kind of, whatever, doing his...
offering himself to her.
Yeah, proselytizing or whatever he was doing. Yeah, that was a bit much, but once we got past that point, I thought it got going pretty good.
But I do think you're right. He would get a visual idea, a trick in his head, and then he would just play it and play it and play it and play it. There's scenes where he's talking and Mandy's face keeps flashing over top of his, and then his face fades back in, and then Mandy's face fades back up in this weird sort of psychedelic thing. And I think it would have been really effective if he'd just done it a couple of times. But it kind of goes to the well too much. But I love how scary the cultists were, and how their eyes were all glassy and fucked. There's this backstory that the cultist had pissed off this guy that was cooking for him, so he gave him this bad batch, which perma-fucked them, which just made them embrace their darkest corners and become somehow less than human. They've been traveling around causing trouble all over the place, but to the great unluckiness of this couple, Nicolas Cage and his companion are spotted by them, and the leader takes a like to her, to Mandy, steals her, and kills her brutally in front of the Nicolas Cage character.
Yes, and this actually, they actually filmed that maxim that, you know, because they talk about men and women, like the thing a woman is most afraid of is, or the thing that a man is most afraid of is that a woman will laugh at him. The thing a woman is most afraid of is that he's going to fucking kill her.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened in this movie.
It's true.
Yeah, but now we come to the life lesson of the movie. If you are a cult leader and you are going to kill the love of someone's life right in front of them, you should probably go ahead and kill that guy too.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just leave them for dead and allow them to exact terrible revenge.
Or, like, frame it like you're doing some great favor to them.
Yeah, no, that's never going to work out. It's just never going to work out.
And you hate him, and you hate, like, his acolytes who look at Nicolas Cage and shame him for being so unworthy of even being in their presence, and like, ooh, I don't like these people. Bill Duke shows up in the movie. He's a great filmmaker, a director in his own right, but everybody knows him as the dude from Predator. This is this really tough, bald, black guy who I haven't seen in front of the camera for a while. He's been doing most of his work behind it. He's the guy who sort of lets Nicolas Cage know where these guys are going to be and basically tells him, if you're going into this fight, you should probably go into it thinking you're going to lose.
Yeah, and he was holding the Reaper for Nicolas Cage.
That's right.
Yes. I love that Nicolas Cage can forge his own weapons. That was awesome.
That's an interesting skill set that you have in your little background there.
Yeah, very good.
So I gotta ask, what did you think of the grief tantrum that Nicolas Cage throws in the movie? There's a famous scene where he gets back to his trailer, he drinks a bottle of vodka, and he's in his underwear and sits on a toilet, and he screams, and it's just this steady shot of Nicolas Cage losing his mind for like 4 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I thought it was totally convincing. My first question was, why do you keep liquor in the bathroom? But then I read something after that said, like, maybe he's a recovering alcoholic, so maybe you hide it in stupid places, so fine, whatever. But it reminded me of that movie with Scarlett Johansson and, what's his name, Kylo Ren.
A Marriage Story.
Where he has that outburst and people were talking about how great his acting. I was like, oh my god, no, I hated that scene. I thought it was like totally put on. And I felt the opposite of that for Nicolas Cage in this scene. And I don't know, I thought that was curious in my own mind why this one seemed real and totally fine and the other one I just hated it and it made me cringe.
Well, again, Mandy's not necessarily set in the real world. So I think it gets us a little bit of room with that. And it is Nicolas Cage. I think that Nicolas Cage can do certain things that other actors couldn't do. Like, I think Tim Robbins is an amazing actor, but I don't think Tim Robbins was going to give us that. You know, like, that was strictly Nicolas Cage. But, like, you see him screaming to the point where he is losing his sense of identity. Like, he has been so wronged and he is so helpless to feel anything but misery that all he can do is sit and scream. And I thought it was kind of amazing. Like, it's not a happy scene, but I was like, holy shit. Like, you don't really need anything else to be on board for this vengeance to take place. And people talk about how revenge movies appeal to our basest nature, and that they're not necessarily good stories from a moral perspective, and like, yeah, you've been wrong. Someone killed your son, someone raped your daughter, and you're going to track them down and kill them, and then credits will roll. But in the end, nobody won in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
Mandy, I think, transcends the vengeance sort of movie, and that it is cheap and kind of nasty in its setup and what it is, but you want to see this vengeance played out, and it is very satisfying to see it played out, and it is gruesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have the Rolodex of horror movies in my mind that you do, but I have never seen a chainsaw sword fight before. I mean, maybe that happens all the time in other movies, but no, it was the first time for me. I thought that was a really long chainsaw.
Yeah. I don't know if those really long chainsaws exist, but I have seen a really long chainsaw like that in another movie. But do they exist outside of movies, or are they like getting hit on the head and having amnesia, a kind of thing that only happens in the movies?
Yeah. Oh, and there was also the Cheddar Goblin commercial, which was out of nowhere.
Yes, that was kind of nice.
Yes.
But again, I talked about how in Midsommar there was like a few moments where you're expecting them to cut away and they don't. Yeah, Mandy doesn't believe in cutting away. If someone's going to get their head squished, we're going to see them get their head squished. And there's an interesting... Because like he's wading through these cultists and killing them pretty much mercilessly. And like, again, we don't necessarily feel bad about him. But he lets that one girl walk.
Mm-hmm. She was the one person who, when they were around the fire burning Mandy, sure, she didn't stop anything, but she couldn't, let's be realistic. But she was the one person who was not taking joy from this happening.
Right.
And she, I think, she was the most victim as a cult member can be. And I think that Nicolas Cage recognized that and didn't need to kill her. She's not going home from this starting another cult.
No.
She's going to a trauma center and she's going to just live her life. She's going to work at a supermarket and it's going to be fine.
I was just curious about it because, and again, this could just be my perspective on it. My perspective of Nicolas Cage when he finally forges his weapons and sets out to kill these people is like he's on a fucking rampage. Like, and he doesn't give anybody a time to like. One of the guys was like in the middle of going on one of these speeches and he just shuts him up by killing him. Like, up until this point, he'd been all action. It was the one time where he stayed his hand, and it sort of reflected a more sanity than I expected existed in him at this point.
Oh, to me, it was just like, it seemed completely, it made sense. Like, everybody else deserved it except her.
Right.
You know? But yeah, speaking of the guy with the tiger, the scientist, the guy who's making the LSD,
yeah,
that was a really cool scene, I thought, because it was a totally one-sided conversation. The guy was just talking and answering his own questions, and Nicolas Cage was just standing there staring at him.
And he was so really high. He looked so fucking stoned. I don't know how they did that, but like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting.
I've seen that guy. He shows up in a lot of horror movies. He's got that creepy face, and I assumed when I knew he was going to be in the movie, he was going to be one of the big bads. I guess in this world, he's kind of a neutral figure. Yikes. It's a very one-of-a-kind movie, is Mandy. He's George P. Cosmatos, I believe is the name of the director. He's done Panos Cosmatos. Gesundheit is the name of the director. He's done one other film, but I am interested to see where he goes from here. Is this just where he is? Is the Mandy world all he's got, or does he got other things that he can show us? I do like Mandy, but I do think it's a very distinct meal. Like, typically this isn't the type of thing that I like, but there was such precision to this. The madness was strangely hypnotizing and delicious, but it's fucking out there. And I would definitely warn anybody going in, like, this is about as crazy a movie as you're likely to see. So
but it totally caught me off guard. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did.
Me too, to be honest.
That's the magic of Nicolas Cage, probably.
and if it brings about a renaissance in Nick Cage, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Boom. So Mireille, that was the 6 arty-farty horror movies that we just talked about. And I feel like we were largely on the same page, so like, I don't know, I'm curious to see how this ranks out. I suspect that we're going to agree on the bottom of the list, but prove me wrong. What was your least favorite of these 6 movies and why?
Number 6, The Neon Demon.
What?
Yeah. Actually, one thing we didn't talk about was the title. What does the title have to do with anything? Like, I don't, just...
It sounds cool.
I don't know, it's the city, the stuff, I don't know. Anyways, yeah, so, because it was gross for no reason, and the story was obvious and derivative and not interesting. Number 6. Number 5, I put Honeymoon, because I just thought the plot didn't move along as well as it should, and even though there were things that I liked about it, the back and forth with no answers I just found too tedious, and that made me kind of disconnect from the movie. Number 4, I put Darling, and the only reason actually it ranked higher than Honeymoon was just the thought of being in a huge house by myself like that, and that does freak me out, and I don't like that, so I got that feeling from the movie, and I thought that was good. Number 3, The Eyes of My Mother. Yeah, like we said, it was an interesting story, really, really dark. Yeah, it went places I didn't expect it to go, and it was beautifully filmed, nice, great music. Number 2, Mandy, because it was delightfully bonkers. And number 1, Midsommar. I think it, has head and shoulders above the rest.
Oh, yeah. Again, that was a similar position I found myself in when we were doing a list that had Hereditary in it. I was like, well, there's Hereditary, and then there's 5 other movies.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely agreed on the top and bottom. And those are the important ones, Mick. Those are the ones that we care about.
I guess.
Yeah, The Neon Demon, definitely at the bottom of this list for me. There's something... short of maybe a comedy, there's something about when you're failing at something this pretentious, that really hurts. It's like when you're trying to be super funny and you lay an egg, it just becomes really, really uncomfortable and hard to watch. I got that vibe right away, and it went on for 2 hours. And again, it's not really the actor's fault. It's not even the director of photography's fault. It does not hold together. It's just not worth your time. It's just how I feel. In 5th place, I put Darling. I did laugh a few times when I wasn't supposed to laugh at the movie, which is a big demerit point for me. But I also recognize what he was going for, and I do get if you are into that sort of 60s psychological vibe, that this could be quite a meal for you. It just wasn't complete to me somehow. It was missing something. But it was a good swing, micro-budget horror movie. It was interesting. I'm not mad at it. In 4th place, I put Honeymoon. Again, I think it was the concept that I really latched onto. The horror idea, the Jekyll and Hyde idea. It's not you, though. It's the person that you love. What do you do when the person that you love just suddenly changes, and you don't know how or why they changed or what you can do about it? I think there's a real meal for a horror movie, and I think another horror movie might take those same themes and go past this one. But I like what they were playing with. So, in 4th place, Honeymoon. In 3rd place, The Eyes of My Mother, which I guess it seems a little bit high. It's just so grim and such a nightmare of a movie. But I like to grade a movie on what were they trying to do and how successful were they at doing it. And I think that The Eyes of My Mother was doing everything that it was trying to do very successfully. It's not a movie that I'm going to revisit again and again, but it's effectively a well-done movie. So yes. I think Mandy would be a number 1 for a lot of people. It seems like some people who like Mandy are over the moon for it. I really, really liked it. I enjoyed it, but I'm maybe not over the moon for it. I think it's a very distinct meal. I think that it's one of those movies you don't just throw on, but who knows, 5 years from now, you know what? We should watch Mandy. And it'll be the exact right movie for that night. But it's not something that I could see myself, revisiting again and again. I think it would become diluted. The strangeness would become diluted somehow.
Yeah, you're probably right. Oh, and they're in the middle of a forest, and he's very careless with his cigarettes. He kept flicking them off into the... I disapproved.
Yeah, well, that's why it's in second place. Cigarette butts. And it's fake, but, you know... Yes, so number 1 was Midsommar. And I also developed quite a little crush on Florence Pugh because of this movie. She was in the Black Widow movie as Scarlett Johansson's little sister in that movie. And completely different world and different level of performance, but also very charming. Like, in Midsommar, you just wanted to hug her. She just needed a hug so bad. And, yeah, I don't think in Black Widow she's someone who would receive a hug. But no, big fan of that actress, big fan of that director, and yeah, I understand people making the connection with The Wicker Man, but I do think it's a different and a strangely bigger movie than The Wicker Man. And
I haven't seen The Wicker Man. The only thing I know about The Wicker Man is that it's on TV in the background in Shallow Grave.
It's similar cults, and it has a similar, I guess would argue, finale. But it's handled very differently. But check out Wicker Man. I could see you having some fun with that.
Okay.
It's definitely a weird one. Thank you so much for making this R&R work, and I'm sorry if I was hassling you about it. I don't mean to be crawling up your ass.
Sorry. I've been so terrible about, like, I'll impose a deadline on myself so that I can get things done, and then I'm like, but I could, move that deadline. It's just awful. So I apologize for all of those things.
Well, and I apologize for making you watch The Neon Demon, but I think there was some other things in here that kind of helped to balance the scales a little bit.
Yes.
Boom. And there it was, another episode of Rank and Review is in the rear view mirror. What do you think? Do you disagree? Were we way too hard on the Neon Demon? Or were we not hard enough on Mandy? Send your feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Check out the website at ranknreview.ca. And as we drop every other Wednesday, and you might need other things to plug into your ears, you should check out the Terror Table podcast, and you should check out the Shelf Shedding movie show hosted by my good friend Jason Dubray. They're both local podcasts to me, and they know what they're doing and are worth your ears. I'll talk to you guys again real soon. Thank you so much for listening.